Hi and welcome again to Breaking Ground. I'm your host, Roger Monder. Farming history is the theme of this show, and I'm sure today's offering will make you want to stay tuned. Our first piece deals with an organization called Century Farms. Farming in this province goes back a long way, and the people who run the Century Farms program have worked hard to recognize the farms that have survived for over 100 years. It's a big part of our cultural history. Andy Parsons has been a caretaker of the Parsons Pond Community Pasture for well over 20 years. Andy spent most of that time checking the fences and checking on the animals' well-being. On times, there were 600 sheep and over 100 head of cattle. But after an uncomfortable incident with some coyotes, he decided it was time to move on. Cooking segment host Ann Budgell will be here with Chef Kitty Drake. Kitty has been promoting provincial dishes for years all across Canada. Believe me, it will be well worth your while to stay tuned to see what she has in store for us. We're off for a short commercial break. We'll see you in 2 minutes. From the first recorded farm in Cupids in the early 1600s, farming has been an integral part of life in Newfoundland and Labrador. Century Farms recognizes farms that have been in continuous production for over 100 years.
Well, I can remember when we weren't very big. I got two sisters. One is 30, and the other one is 27, and I'm 25. And here on this field that you see here in the background, Dad had rape growing, greens, and we had a contract going with Dad that we'd get 5 cents a bag for every bag that we helped do up.
In many ways, this short story by farmer Mark Porter of Porterville represents the subtle passing of the torch from one generation to another. In Newfoundland, the torch has been passed down many times to family members, but it's been through the dedicated work of the Agricultural History Society of Newfoundland and Labrador that some of this history has been properly researched and documented. Board member Joe Scheuer outlines the reason for its formation.
It began in 1986, and we've had different projects. One of the first things we did was look at the history of agriculture in the province, and we created an exhibit, a 20-panel exhibit, which has been shown around the province. But in the course of looking at the history, realized what a long time agriculture had been here, and what an amazing story it was to see it evolve from someone who literally just was eking out a living to feed his family to some big commercial enterprises today. And then the fun of that was to see that, in fact, some of these successful farms today actually have been continuous right back since the first pioneer came. And we felt that was a story to tell.
And there were lots of stories to record. Stories that began much like this.
Grandfather came here in about around 1850. That's the whole grandfather. And my grandfather, his son, Dad's father, 1875, where you stopped at the house. Now, he had the land surveyed there, and further down the road, he had 2 pieces of land surveyed in 1875.
In the pioneering days, many of the early farms were intertwined with some kind of involvement in the fishery. Ernest Romaine of Port-au-Port East tells us that his ancestors originally came from Bordeaux, France, in the mid-1800s.
Well, our great-great-grandfather arrived from France back in around 1840, 1850. That's what the record says. And they settled here and set up basically a farming, fishing operation. They went into the fish business, lobster packing, this kind of. And we've kept on passed down from generation to generation. We're basically the 4th generation. In later years, it turned basically into strictly a farming operation. I would say the last 2 generations, my father never fished.
So, as opportunities arose to sell farm products, some of our ancestors left fishing completely and concentrated on the farming side of it all. Joe Scheuer explains how it all evolved.
But also, other opportunities were opening up. For example, if there were towns growing and so on, and a bit of urban expansion, then local farmers would take advantage of that, and they would see that they could peddle milk in the towns and they could sell their vegetables and so on. So the farmers have always had an eye to the main chance in terms of marketing their produce. Well, they were certainly more commercially minded, and I suppose you would call them commercial farms as opposed to subsistence farms. For example, when the railway crossed the island in the 1890s, the farming community was quick to realize that here was another market opening up, because part of the reason for the railway was to open up the interior of the province, looking at forestry and minerals and so on. And you had towns like Grand Falls appearing. Well, the farmers advertised in those towns and said, we'll send you butter, eggs, vegetables, dressed poultry. We will supply industrial towns. So they quickly took advantage of the railway. And they sent their produce on coastal boats up to Labrador and along the south coast as well. So although in a way they were living far away from the Avalon and St. John's and Harbour Grace and some of the bigger towns, they took advantage of the transportation networks to sell.
Kevin Aucoin, also a board member, is very aware of the thousands of farms that once existed. Now it's down to 600 or 700. Confederation with Canada had a big impact.
Pre-Confederation, our farms were more generally a mixed farm, which included livestock, sheep and cattle. And post-Confederation, we seemed to have moved into a much more competitive environment, which required people to operate a little bit more carefully. I think the impact was a little bit slower, but very early on, as wholesalers and distributors were able to acquire produce from other parts of eastern Canada, often at more competitive prices, that certainly had an impact really early on many small farm families who before had a closed market effectively, and they were able to sell probably throughout the year at a better price. But once the Confederation process opened up and movement of produce changed, it impacted farms, very decidedly and fairly early. I think that's reality, but the competitiveness of imports also, I think, challenged farmers to sharpen their pencil quite a bit, and then they may then have begun gradually to be more focused to specific commodities rather than trying to be a grower of everything. So I think we saw a separation then of the business mix, heavier livestock and less crop, or more crop and less livestock, wherever you had the circumstance and soil conditions and to market opportunities to meet that kind of mix. So the change was a number of issues, including more specialization, I think, as part of the evolution.
But the work goes on as information is gathered on agriculture in general and 100-year-old farms in particular. Names like Ruby, Leicester, Field, White, Ireland, Rose, Walsh, and Cormier represent a history that is uniquely Newfoundland. It's a history that's recognized and showcased annually, usually in large, comfortable hotel centers at a dinner and dance, which belies the hardships and sacrifices suffered by our early farming families.
The Century Farm program has given us this opportunity to learn more about these farms and have a better appreciation of where they've come from and the challenges that they've experienced. And so we're kind of writing history to some extent now, and in our longer term process we'll ensure that information is provided to the archives at Memorial University and other places, so that information will be there for the longer term for others to access and to use. But we are learning more about them, appreciating more about who they are, where they come from. And I think our respect has grown for who they are, because these folks have endured a lot of challenges to be where they are today. We also have to think about their fathers and grandfathers who must have struggled tremendously in the early 1900s to survive and pass the farm on to each generation.
Farming is surely a much overlooked part of our history. Now it's time for a short break. When we come back, we're off to Parsons Pond. Welcome back. Here's our story on the Parsons Pond Community Pasture.
Well, one time we fenced the animals out, and now you fence them in. Let's tell a story about it,
Andrew Parsons is caretaker of the regional community pasture near Parsons Pond on the Northern Peninsula. He remembers why the pasture lands were started many years ago.
There's enough feet wet animals that the government will decide where they put pasture lands because nobody had no place to keep their animals, you know. They were getting killed on the highway with vehicles and causing a problem, you know. So that's why they come up with pastures, I guess. First we had community pastures, or little community pastures, which didn't go over because, I mean, wasn't over to make a pasture, really. Then they put this here as regional pasture, so that was the beginning of it, the regional pasture, and it's been going on, like I said, since back in the 70s when they put it here. I don't know just how long it's been here, but I've been here the 24 summers after this.
Some summers there were 600 sheep and over 100 head of cattle to keep track of. While his wife Hannah took care of the children, Andrew took care of the animals.
Well, I spend a lot of time with animals that a lot of people wouldn't spend. The wife don't spend much time with what I do, because I go amongst the animals all the time, talk to them. When I had my own animals, my own sheep, I would just park the truck there in the yard and I'd go down, open the gate, sing out to them, they'd all come. Holler out to the sheep, not only mine, everybody, a lot of people's sheep would come along with them, you know. So you get, you know animals, what they can do and what they can't do, you know. But you grow accustomed to it, you know. I don't know, I guess I put more time into it than I should have. But.
The summer of 2007 will probably be the last year Andrew will work as a caretaker of the regional community pasture in Parsons Pond. He's been thinking about retirement for a while now, but an unfortunate incident in the fall made up his mind for sure.
Coyotes are getting to be a real problem, a real nuisance, eh? Because, I mean, they come around nighttime, you can't see them. We was here last year, it was 10:30 one night, wife and I and our uncle was here with us on this side. And next morning we came back, there was dead sheep on that side. So you can't see the coyote in the dark, eh? But 5 of the sheep was my own sheep, so I said, then that's it. That's the straw that broke the camel's back.
In future years, it's expected there will be no caretaker for the community pastures. Animal owners will just have to take their chances if they decide to leave their animals. For now, Andrew Parsons will be content to show his young relatives what it was like to walk amongst the cows and sheep many years ago.
When we come back, we're going to see what Chef Kitty Drake is cooking up in Ann Budgell's kitchen. I know some of you out there have been watching the show just to see the cooking segment. So here's Chef Kitty Drake in Ann Budgell's kitchen.
Well, today it's all about cabbage, and we've got red cabbage, we've got green cabbage, and some of the delicious foods that go well with them. I'm Ann Budgell, welcome to my kitchen, and I'm here with Kitty Drake, a food consultant and former chef. And Kitty, tell me what you've got in mind for us today.
Well, I have 2 recipes for you to do today, Ann. One is a braised red cabbage, which is served hot, and the other one is a pickled coleslaw using green cabbage. And of course that is served cold.
All right, well, we're starting the process here
With
of doing the braised red.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
we need 7 cups of finely shredded red cabbage.
Let me
so
finish
if you
up
could
shredding
just finish that.
She's already done most of the cutting.
Right, but I gotta get Ann to work a little bit.
Do a little bit here,
So that's
just a little.
perfect, Ann.
Okay.
Okay, just put that all in this big pot.
Yep. All right.
Okay, that looks like a good 7 cups.
Yep.
Okay.
What a pretty color this stuff is, too.
Oh, it's beautiful and it's so tasty. It's very different than green cabbage. It's, I think, sweeter than green cabbage. Okay.
Okay, that is a pot full of cabbage.
That is a
Kitty.
pot full of cabbage. And now if you'll go to the stove where we have a pot.
Yeah, we put this on a little earlier.
Yes, and in this pot we have a 1/4 cup of butter, we have 1/3 cup of water, 1/3 cup of vinegar, a little bit of salt and sugar. And that's nice and hot, and we pour that over the cabbage, and we stir that all up, just so it's nice and the vinegar's all over the cabbage.
Incorporate.
Incorporate, that sounds like a good word.
Yeah, that's the word.
Okay, and we'll just put a lid on that, And this will go in the oven now for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And then you'll take it out and you have 2 other ingredients to add. I'm just
Okay,
gonna
low
set-
temperature, Kitty, or?
No, about 350 degrees.
Okay.
For 1 hour and 45 minutes. And Anne, you need to grate a
Yeah.
little bit of apple. This is for the last 15 minutes when we're baking it. We put in just a little bit of grated apple. And
Really a little. It's like 2 tablespoons or
Yes,
something,
but
isn't it?
it just adds a little sweetness to the vinegar, so it kind of ends up being a sweet and sour flavor, Anne.
And her secret ingredient.
The secret ingredient is red currant jelly. This is Auntie Cray's red currant jelly, but it doesn't have to be red currant jelly. Any tart berry will do. I use partridge berry, dogberry, marshberry, any tart jelly or jam.
And you're putting that in at the last minute.
The
then, are
last
you?
15 minutes, you'll take the cabbage out and you'll stir these to about 4 tablespoons of jelly and the apple. Cover it again, put it back in the oven, and it's done.
And then you get that gorgeous dish.
And then you get that gorgeous dish.
Okay. Now I'm going to scrape this stuff up
And we
for
can just,
now.
Well, actually, we can just remove this. Anne.
Okay.
If you just remove that, I'll start you on the green coleslaw.
Yeah, we've got the coleslaw half prepared or partly prepared.
Yes. And I will bring over what you need. And I'll move this. Okay, the coleslaw is, as you can see,
Cups and cups and cups of finely chopped up
yes, it's a
green
large
cabbage.
green cabbage and a large onion. And then you add sugar, 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, and a teaspoon of salt, and stir that all up.
Okay.
And this is sort of how you make pickles.
Incorporate.
Yes, we incorporate that very well. Okay, you're getting that done. I'll start to bring over the other ingredients that you need for this.
Now you're going to put this stuff in a little saucepan because this is
Yes.
going to be
This is going to be boiling
heated.
hot.
Okay.
Boiling hot when we pour it over the cabbage. So when you
All
get
right,
that
so-
well stirred, okay, now
a little bit of oil. How
Yeah.
much?
It looks like 3/4 of a cup, and about 3/4 of a cup of white vinegar, 1/4 of a cup of sugar, a tablespoon of celery seed. I've used Spice Barn celery seed, and prepared mustard, just a little bit, 2 teaspoons of prepared mustard. And you're just going to put that in, stir it around, and put it on the stove and bring it to a
Bring it to a boil.
boil.
Okay, we're going to bring this to a boil and then we'll.
Then we pour it over
Okay.
the cabbage.
Oh, Kitty, this is boiling fiercely.
Oh, good, perfect. Pour
Bubbly,
it right,
boily,
right
hot.
in on top of that. That's perfect.
Oil, vinegar, mustard, and
Perfect,
sugar.
perfect. Okay.
Woo-wee. There's a fume off of that one.
Good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to use this instead of that thing?
No, I'm okay there,
right.
Anne. Anything will do. Now, we just stir this up really, really well, and we will then put it in the refrigerator for at least 24 hours. And as I said before, this keeps.
You want one of those lovely earthenware crocks to keep this in,
Well,
don't you, Kitty?
Yes, I do have one there.
One of those nice tall ones.
Well, yes, you could have it. Okay, a tall crock, if you say so, Anne. I'll go along with that. Okay, and
so
that's it.
That's easy.
Yes.
Make the dressing, have all the raw cabbage
Yes,
and onion ready to
yes.
go. Put a little bit of sugar and salt on it first, and then
And as it
off you go.
sits, as it has the same elements of any pickle that you make. The vinegar and the salt and the sugar break down the protein and make it cooked. It's cooked in vinegar and salt and sugar.
Now, when it's lovely and cold, look how the color is a little bit different. It seems
Yes,
to
well, that
lighten up
might
a
have
bit.
been the cabbage too, but it'll
cabbage
fade a
maybe.
bit. But that cabbage was very green.
And what have you done with it here?
Well, this is a ham and coleslaw sandwich with Auntie Cray's bread. Can be done in pita bread. It's an absolutely delicious sandwich to eat with the coleslaw. It's just a serving suggestion for you.
You know, a lot of Middle Eastern recipes actually have a pickled cabbage condiment
Yes,
with
a
them.
lot of. Now, just a minute. I'm going to serve you up a little bit
Cut a
of
slice of that lovely roast pork.
roast pork and.
Or as a friend of mine says, roast pork.
Well, here we go. A lovely little bit of roast pork, which has had some salt and pepper and savory put on top of it and baked, and some delicious roast.
Well, Kitty, I think I don't want to work anymore. I think it's time to have a bite to eat.
And, oh, wait, Anne, I forgot the cabbage.
Looking good.
which is really good. And here's a fork
Yum.
for you to try that cabbage.
Okay, well, I'm not going to talk with my mouth full.
Okay.
I'm going to get my mouth full right now, though. Kitty, thank you
well,
so much.
that's your lunch. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ah, now wasn't that grand? I can't wait to try that myself. On next week's show, we're going to talk to Billy Woods of Torbay. A farming accident changed his life forever. His recounting of that terrible night when he lost his arm reminds us all of the many dangers that exist in any workplace. He considers himself lucky to be alive, and after meeting fellow disabled farmers, he constantly wants to remind farm owners of the potential hazards. Sod farming is another aspect of agriculture that is often overlooked. Since 1990, Pat Hewitt of Emerald Sods in St. Shots has been expanding his business at a steady pace. We'll have a look at how his operation is going and the general state of sod farming in the province. In all endeavors, there's a time to relax and enjoy what your own personal work has to offer others around you. Every year, farms across the province invite the general public to have a close look at what goes on at a functional farm. It's usually a special day, especially for the kids, as there are tractor rides, corn mazes, and a host of other attractions designed to please all members of the family. Restaurant 21 owner Brian Abbott is back to show us how to make a meal even more pleasing by using fresh local produce. He also uses a lot of special ingredients to make a meal unforgettable. Cooking host Ann Budgell will attest to that. I'm sure you won't want to miss next week's show. See you then.